Well, we have finally reached the end of the 2023-24 campaign for all three of the CMU club hockey teams. Tonight on Inside Chippewa Hockey, we'll take a look at the last 2 weeks for all three teams and take a look ahead at the national tournament for the Women's Division II team as they make their second straight appearance in the national tournament. That's coming up right after this on Inside Chippewa Hockey. Welcome back inside the Moore Hall TV studio, and for this episode of Inside Chippewa Hockey, I'm Reagan Cleaves, your host, and we'll start tonight's show off by taking a look at the Men's Division III final series against Northwood and Michigan. Joining me now is CCHN broadcaster Devin Serra and CMU D3 club hockey netminder Sam Zavelson. Guys, how are you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. Yourself?
I'm doing well.
Yeah. Pretty good. Busy last couple of days, especially for us. But, man, looking forward to this episode.
Yeah, it's good to have you guys on. So taking a look, that series against Northwood, you came in hot, winning 4 straight at home. You open up the series against Northwood with that win on home ice. How much did that mean to get the win over that team, a team that you hadn't seen in a couple of years?
Absolutely. So that game meant more to us than just a normal game. It was more than just a normal win, being that former coaches of ours had moved to the program, so it was a little bit personal for myself and a bunch of the other players on the team. So that first win was a really big weight to get off the chest, felt really good, and yeah.
Yeah, and it was a close one, Devin. Through the first couple of periods, we were tied coming into that third period, and then the gates kind of blew off. CMU scored 4 goals in that third period. How much did that momentum change?
Well, it changed right after the beginning of the third period. You know, Central was really stammering throughout that game, staggering. They really didn't have a lot of flow, I felt, to that game. There was a lot of mistakes, especially through the neutral zone, but they got it together late. You talked about opening the floodgates open. Goals helped out by Spencer Messina, Jay Nadeau, Jace Johnson, who had his second of his career in that. A very good result for them. And the point is, for that is they closed out the game, and that was a big part of their entire momentum that second semester. You know, we talked about that being 4 straight wins, right? So a very good result for them. And
you mentioned 4 straight wins. That was the 16th win all-time against Northwood in just 17 games. So CMU has dominated that series, and that's the mentality this team went with into that second game at Northwood. But it was much the same story, a very close game, and in the end, penalties ended up costing you guys.
Yeah, that second game was tough. I really thought that we'd be able to pull away there, being the success that we had on the first night, as you guys mentioned, with the offense really picked up. I think goaltending was really good. I think Caleb was really good coming off of that second Oakland game where he basically shut them down and then proceeded to win the games following. But we just couldn't do it. A mix of penalties, whether it be a lack of discipline or a lack of offense too. Additionally, playing on Olympic ice, so I think was a challenge for a lot of the guys. A lot of them didn't realize they had more time than they actually did, and hurt us in the end, but I think we'll be able to get them again. Hopefully if we move up to D1, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, and you mentioned a really tight game. By the way, shout out Will Rappoon for his only goal of the season. That was pretty cool to see. It was an electrifying goal when it happened, but you're right, Northwood really found an extra step. The Olympic ice made things a little bit different, right? All that open ice, you have the ability to really stretch the play, make some of those stretch passes. Northwood surprisingly had the pace, and that was something we didn't see that later in that first game. You know, we thought fatigue would be a thing, but it was almost like Northwood, they rode the momentum, right? Those 2 power play goals at the end killed CMU big time. But at the end of the day, that Northwood team, very young. Joe Cooper, former Chippewa, of course, coached that team, and they were ready to go for that final home game. You know, they had motivation in that regard, so I think Northwood just played a pretty solid game there at the end, and it's really no fault just of CMU. Northwood really put a lot together at the end.
Yeah, Northwood certainly put a good effort in that one, and that set the stage for the final games of the regular season. CMU matched up against the defending national champions of the Michigan Wolverines and played them pretty good, Devin. It started out a tight loss on the road at Arctic Edge of Canton, but things turned around in that second game.
Oh, they did, certainly, right? And that being the final home game of the season, senior night, honoring as many as 10. And it was emotional for you and I, stepping on the ice. What a fun ceremony. But, man, came out flying, right? And what about some unsung heroes in that game? Brendan Schultz, who wasn't getting on the board as much in the second semester before the first, and then Brandon Clements getting an electrifying goal. I want to talk this about you, because this was good for both of us. You played one of your best. I interviewed you after the game. How did it feel to knock off a top 15 team like that and put them out of nationals?
Right. That was a really fun game, honestly. Morale was a little bit low after the prior 2 losses there, and they scored quick, if I recall correctly, in that game. And we really bounced back, came together as a whole, like you mentioned. Seniors, like I like to think myself, Schultz as well, stepped up. And then players like Clements, too, who I think will be really bright for the team going forward in his time here. That was an insane goal, and that was what the team needed at that moment, and I think that helped propel us over Michigan. At that time, we were still fighting for a national spot, and that was a big win. And we're hoping to roll that into playoffs as well. Yeah,
and I just mentioned the fact that they were ranked 13th right there. After that initial ranking, they dropped 7 spots, the most of any top 16 team. And that ultimately, as we know now, just put them out of nationals. So you guys had the upset of the season, reigning national champions no more. So we'll have a new champion in 2024 because of that.
Yeah, we will have a new champion crowned in St. Louis in just a couple of weeks, but I want to take a look at the next game, a rarity in the ACHA. 3 consecutive games against the same opponent. You finished out the regular season against Michigan Sam, and then you went into that game against the Wolverines at Crystal Fieldhouse for the first round of the MCHC playoffs. Things, again, started pretty well, but Michigan seemed to have control of that game from the start. How did your team try and respond to that?
I really think our 2 losses to them were more of a fatigue-based thing, whether that be the loss on the road, all the defensive breakdowns and the goals from the point, and same thing for the playoff game as well. It was very close, if I recall correctly, for the majority of it, and then the floodgates kind of just opened again as the second, third period went on, no different than Northwood did at the end. So I think there's a really promising future with the team, and I hope in the next couple of years here I'll be able to come back as an alumni and see them have great success.
Yeah, a lot of what I think about in this game, of course, you have to look at the missed opportunities a little bit. A lot of breakaways, a lot of 2-on-1s. This game got chaotic throughout that. I remember you and I saying at some point somebody's got to break through because they're snake bit. It never ended up happening. Michigan just swung it too far in their favor, especially mounting those goals late. And it just seemed insurmountable at that point entering the third. But overall, I mean, relating back to that second game, of course, this was a matchup that coming in knew would be very difficult against a lot of veteran experienced guys who, Michigan lost a lot of seniors last year, but they still have a lot of their national championship core there. Central, like the second semester was, had 5 straight home games to finish this year on wins. And, a playoff game didn't go the way they wanted, but they've had some bad luck in the playoffs as recently, so unfortunate way to end the year, but of course proud of how they put up a fight against one of the best.
Yeah, indeed, CMU's last win in the MCHC conference tournament came back in the quarterfinal against Lawrence Tech 2 seasons ago. It was a 3-4 overtime win. The last time CMU has come back from a deficit in that third period. Devin, I want to recap the MCHC tournament quickly here. Michigan went on to lose to Lawrence Tech. LTU made it to the semifinals along with Calvin, Hope, and Oakland. It was kind of a boring tournament to say a little bit. It was
no doubt about that. Some blowouts in there.
Hope won their semifinal against Oakland 4-0, and then LTU in a chaotic semifinal against the Calvin Knights won 5-2. Hope and LTU. It was a big meeting in the final for the Vezina Cup. The top 2 teams in the land. Tell me a little bit more about that game and take me through it.
Well, you're talking about the national championship here, where Lawrence Tech, #1 in the nation, all of a sudden, thanks to Grand Valley State falling in some upsets, and entering that game, the big story was, what does this Hope team look like? A very young roster, a lot of turnover. Tech ended up being the team that came out, I think, a little bit faster, but it was ultimately Hope College who got on the board first in the 2 minutes there, so I guess I just contradict myself a little bit, right? But we know what Hope College is. We know they're very well coached. Chris Van Timmerman has been with that program a long, long time, and they have a great system. I think LTU saw themselves get in some penalty trouble. They had as many as 8 or 9 in this game, and you really saw the frustration mount for them. That ended up being the difference late. Hope College ends up winning 3-0, back-to-back Vezina Cup championships. We know they've been to the national title game in 4 of the last 5 years with a couple of natties in there. So it's a little tough when you look at just this head-on. Lawrence Tech, of course, is in their #1 spot in Pool A, so they're going to be riding. But Hope College got that ever-important momentum. So I feel bad for whoever's in that pool. Dartmouth, Calvin, Sacred Heart, look out, because the Hope College Dutchmen are back.
Indeed, and we'll take a look at that when we come back. Devin, Sam, thank you so much for joining us. Well, we'll step aside when we come back. Devin and I will have a closer look at the rankings here on Inside Chippewa Hockey.
Chippewa Hockey is on CCHN.
Oh my goodness!
The place to watch men's Division III.
Here's Connor Morgan out and quick for Porzundicki scores!
And women's Division II.
Burnett's gonna get a shot and goal, and she scores!
Every shift, every goal, every game.
Central Michigan has turned the corner.
All in one place. CCHN, your home for Chippewa Hockey.
Time now to take a look at the men's Division III National Tournament set to kick off, Devin, March 7th at Centene Community Ice Center. We saw the #1 and #2 teams in the nation last week in the MCHC final. They head up both their pools in Pool A and Pool B, Lawrence Tech and Hope.
Yeah, and what a surprise, right? We thought forever it was going to be Grand Valley State, that #1 seed. Not so fast. Lawrence Tech out of nowhere, who made it all the way to their first Vezina Cup final, beating Michigan in the second round, beating Calvin 5-2 in that game you saw, and then, of course, bowing out 3-0. But Lawrence Tech is a very good team, head coached by Ken Gaffney in his 15th season. This team has had a lot of animosity. They've always been a contender at nationals, but as of recently, they haven't made it out of the semifinal. They have not made a national final in their history. So if they're going to do it, this is the year it looks like it.
Yeah, and it is going to be that year because they've got a relatively easy pool. You see Colby College and St. Vincent. St. Vincent was one of those two teams, along with Sacred Heart, that knocked out two MCHC teams.
Yeah, the big story of this one was those auto bids, right? And St. Vincent, who's out of the College Hockey East Conference, named the auto bid for being regular season champions. As you see them down here, the big surprise there is they were ranked 24. The eligibility states in the ACHA you need to be within the top 25 teams and win your conference or be considered a champion in order to make the tournament. So they were the last team in, number 24. That bumps out Oakland and SVSU, who are number 15 and 16, and there you see Sacred Heart, as we'll get to in a little bit.
The #2 team in that Pool A is Arkansas. Out of the Matcha, they are 19-12 this season. They're coming off of a tough weekend series against Nebraska, their final week of the regular season. But they're a dark horse candidate in this Pool A.
They always are. They've always made nationals every year representing the Matcha. They've always been the best team out of the Matcha. This year you have the likes of Missouri, who won the conference, but still a very formidable team. They swept Florida Gulf Coast, handed them their only road loss of the year, Florida Gulf Coast. And they had some really good stuff down the stretch. Now, they did lose in their conference playoffs. They didn't make the final in that one, and not to mention they're coming off a loss to unranked Nebraska. So they've got some miscues there. We don't know what this team exactly looks like, as you and I haven't seen them, but they're always in the mix. And then you go down the line there, and it's Colby College out of the NECA Conference. And this one is a little bit interesting because I don't think Colby was a team that anybody expected to be here. They certainly weren't on our radar to start the preseason, but they've been a very formidable team. The NECA Conference they represent, and they've had some big wins this year. They tied Dartmouth early in the season. That really helped them out. The likes of Central Maine Community College, they lost to in their conference playoffs, but they won both regular season games over 12th ranked CC. So a lot of good things for them. They've been riding the hot streak as of late. Another team that lost their playoffs, but they've been skating in as well.
Well, there you go. You got Pool A, Lawrence Tech, Arkansas, Colby College, and St. Vincent, that number 16 spot rounding out that pool. In Pool B, Devin, you got the Hope Dutchmen, who have been in three consecutive national title games. They head up that pool with Dartmouth, Calvin, and Sacred Heart.
They've made the national tournament championship the last 4 out of 5 years. This is the Alabama standard if you want to compare apples to oranges here. of ACHA Men's Division III hockey. They swept MSU not just once, twice, but 3 games and shut them out in 2 of those. Their goaltender right now, McLean Chick, hasn't allowed a goal in 268 minutes. He is hot right now. This is one of the best teams in the country for a reason. They're number 2. They're usually the number 1 team, but riding that second consecutive MCHC Vezina Cup championship, Hope College is in there as probably the favorites to go back to the national title game.
And moving down that list, you got Dartmouth at number 7 in the nation. They're a team that we've kind of talked about all year in our conversations, Devin, that they've got a lot of talent on their roster. They obviously benefit from having an NCAA team on their campus.
Super. And speaking of NCAA, they've got as many as 4 NCAA players on this roster. And you look at the losses they've had, only 2 on the year. One of those pretty tough against Air Force at number 5 there, so you can't really hang their head on that. They lost to unranked Worcester Polytechnic in the conference playoff. So that's a little bit of a question mark right now. Whether this team can keep up with the likes of Hope College. They certainly have the talent, it seems like, on their roster with those former NCAA guys. But if I were betting money, I'd still pick this as to be Hope's pool. And you look at Calvin in there at number 10, a very interesting team. Beat Grand Valley State 6-0 in the second round of the MCHC playoffs on the west side. And we know that Grand Valley State has questions. We're going to get to them in a second. But that's super interesting as Calvin's in there. You know, they've got some really good ranked wins this year. They've played a lot of teams in this lineup, the likes of Missouri and Purdue. So Calvin's in there to be interesting. And then Sacred Heart as the MCHC, the Metro Collegiate Hockey Conference champions. I had a chance to talk to their commissioner on the phone, and he explained to me that Sacred Heart was another regular season champion. They just played their conference tournament, and like St. Vincent over here, they won their conference tournament. So even though they're regular season champions, bumped out Saginaw Valley and Oakland University, they're still very much very good. Best win this year, number 25, UMass, staying hot. So we'll see what we have out of Pool B.
So there you have it in Pool B, Devin. A lot of teams a little bit more wide open, but with how dominant Hope has been lately, it's going to be a hard pool to get out of. Now we move on to Pool C. The team we thought was going to be the number 1 team all season, Grand Valley State, massive losses to end the year, Devin. They lose 6-1 to Ferris State and 6-0 in the conference semifinals, the conference quarterfinals to Calvin. That drops them from the number 1 seed, which they had for the entirety of the year, to the number 3 seed.
That's super surprising, right? 2 of their final 3 losses on the year come in those final games. Ferris State was the biggest surprise, and I looked at the box score on that. It was not a penalty-filled game. They didn't allow a lot of shots. They just flat out got beat in the 5-on-5. And then you look at that Calvin game. We're going to skip past their win against Western Michigan because we know Western hasn't really been the best team in the MCHC the past couple of years. Ranked number 1 in the country for 7 straight weeks, and then they lose 6-0 to Calvin. They take as many as 6 penalties in that game. One player that got a penalty, a 5-minute major for contact to the head, was Andrew Mulder, one of their best players, number 97 forward. Dylan Knox and this group have questions. They were number 1 team. They were rolling. They split with Hope College, that being their only other loss in overtime. But now I'm really questioning this team. Bobby Masters is a very good goaltender. We know what they have at the front groups there with the brothers Steve and Joe Myers, but I don't know where to go with this team right now. They look like fragile pieces.
Yeah, and they indeed look fragile, and they're running into a team that has made the national tournament about as often as GV has in Florida Gulf Coast, but unlike the Lakers, FGCU has had a very hard time making it even out of their pool, even though they've been ranked as high as 2.
Yeah, and one of the best independent teams for the last couple of years. They're another team that makes nationals periodically. The Division II team has a couple of national championships in there. This Division III squad still looking for their first. But their best ones this year came against Lawrence Tech, number 2, 4-3 early in the year. They beat Oakland and Michigan early on as well. But kind of shocking with this team, too, is they lost their final 3 games of their season. They got upset 3-2 by Miami, Ohio. Then they got swept by Arkansas right here in Pool A. So big wins for Arkansas, but both those losses are away from Hertz Arena. This is a team we know has struggled to put games together on the road, and it's really showing right now, losing 3 straight. And this pool, as we continue talking about it, is kind of up for grabs.
Yeah, and Florida Gulf Coast is a team that, yes, they struggle on the road, but that's partly because they don't play a ton of games on the road. Taking a look at number 11, Purdue, they enter into the tournament at 22-5 or 0-5 or 22-5 0-1 rather, and they're the ICHC champions. They knocked off Miami of Ohio and are out to their conference tournament, but they're a team that, like Florida Gulf Coast and like Missouri State, are returning back to this national tournament.
I think you look at them and their out-of-conference wins as the storytelling. They beat number 4 Missouri earlier in the year, took care of business against Missouri State. They have the longest win streak of any men's Division III team this year, 11 straight, including back-to-back Indiana Conference championships. Their last loss was against number 1 Lawrence Tech, 4-2, back in November. So if you're looking at the favorite in this pool right now, it's not GV, it's not Florida Gulf Coast, it's Purdue down here because they're hot and they knocked off number 2 Notre Dame last year. They're always an upset alert, like their football team is.
That's a bold prediction, Devin. You're taking number 11 over number 3 and number 6. So we'll see how that pans out. And Missouri State rounds out this pool, number 14 in the nation. They're one of the few teams in this top 16 that has more than 10 losses. They're 20-11-0-1 and as part of the Matcha Silver North. Again, another conference that has perennially put teams into the national tournament.
Yeah, right. And another one that's, they're at nationals. They've competed. They had a tough go of it last year with the likes of Hope and Missouri. But Missouri State lost their opening Matcha playoff game to Creighton. Now, that's a real cause for concern because Creighton's unranked as well. They beat number 16 Saginaw Valley State early in the year, along with the number 8 team in Arkansas, but that was in a very tough environment as well. I'm curious about Missouri State if they can get an upset here and there, but it's going to be another tough road for them to get out of this pool.
And this is a team that has been in the national tournament the last 2 years. They made a run for it in the pool play of last year, but did not make it out. Taking a look now at Pool D, the final pool in Men's Division III. And Devin, as much as we've talked about the other 3 pools being maybe sort of open, the 4, 5, 12, and 13 has always been a tumultuous pool. Any team can come out of it.
Especially with who's in it, right? Another one that you can say Missouri's there, being the Matcha champions back-to-back, riding high. Their final year in Division III. They're going to D2 next year. They have wins against Nebraska, Omaha, number 8 Arkansas, Kansas. They had a 7-goal first period in the Matcha championship game, winning 12-7. Well-deserved, but they've got some tough customers in here. Air Force is in there at number 5. Technically, only 1 loss on the year, but they are certainly really tough to play. And then Central Maine Community College, another NECA team surprise, and Michigan State in there coming off the 3 straight losses to Hope College. We've talked to a couple of coaches in there that have said Michigan State is one of the best teams in the country. They're a sleeper team. They're slept on. Nobody really expects them to do anything. But if Missouri, like they were on that hot streak last year, I think they won 17 straight games going into nationals and then got trounced by Hope College. If they're going to do anything in this pool, it starts with game 1, and we've got it against Air Force and Central Maine Community College.
Yeah, so there you go. There are the top 16. Devin, before we go, semifinal predictions, who you got out of each pool?
Well, first of all, we're going to go back to Pool A here, right? I think Lawrence Tech is the unanimous group here. This team out of the MCHC, although they lost their Vesna Cup final and got shut out, they're angry as heck about it. This Lawrence Tech team, head coached by Ken Gaffney, is resilient. We know for a fact that they have never made the championship final. I'm certain they'll get back to the semi, and I'm certain it's going to be a good game, whoever they face. And speaking of who they could face,
they will face Pool D.
Pool D, right. And I'm looking at that next with Missouri or Michigan State. Air Force, a good independent team, but I don't know what their squad looks like in terms of depth. I have a feeling it's going to be Michigan State and Lawrence Tech. I think you're going to see those 2 MCHC teams. Sorry to Missouri. I think that's a very good squad, but I don't know if I trust them, especially with the lack of defense we've seen out of the Matcha. Meanwhile, over in Pool B, unanimous, it's got to be Hope College. The back-to-back Vesna Cup champions, lost to Michigan in the national championship. Head coach Chris Van Timmerman, I had a question to ask him. How fired up are you about losing that game? Very. They had a lot of upset seniors in that. It's a younger squad, but I think that plays to their advantage, not being fatigued as much. So Hope College out of Pool B. And Pool C, I said it earlier, but I'm going with Purdue. I think they get the upset in this one. I think Florida Gulf Coast and Grand Valley are vulnerable right now. Purdue is a team to have some upsets. That final game, whether it's against Grand Valley or Florida Gulf Coast, could be a tiebreaker scenario, but I think it's them. So Lawrence Tech, Michigan State, Purdue, and Hope College. And if any teams watch this right now, put me as bulletin board material because I want it. I'm here for it.
So you've got Lawrence Tech, Lawrence Tech and Michigan State in the semi, and Hope, as well as Purdue. What's your final prediction?
Oh, man. I think it's Hope College again. You can't bet against the Hope Flying Dutchmen, as great as they are. 4 of the 5 last national title game appearances. I would say it's going to be against Lawrence Tech. I think this is the time where you get that Vezina Cup rematch. You get a Lawrence Tech team that's very well coached. I mentioned Connor Juhas. Juhas did not get the points he wanted in that last Vezina Cup final. They're going to make it. I think it's Lawrence Tech and Hope. And I'm going to bet I don't know if I can pick a winner yet.
So what you're predicting, Devin, is for the second straight season a rematch of the MCHC final.
I think so. I think the MCHC still runs things. Although, hey, the least amount of MCHC teams we've seen in a long time, only 5. It's going to be a great national tournament. We're going to be there the whole way.
Yeah, and to your point, it's the fewest amount of MCHC teams percentage-wise in the national tournament since we went to this 16-team format, that top 16 ranking rather than the regionals. So should be a fun tournament. Again, you can watch on Flow Hockey. Well, that's it for us here at the Green Screen. We'll send it back to the desk and take a look at the Women's Division II team here on Inside Chippewa Hockey.
Chippewa Hockey is on CCHN.
Oh my goodness!
The place to watch Men's Division III
Here's Connor Morgan out in front for Porzundek. He scores!
and Women's Division II.
Burnett's gonna get a shot and goal, and she scores!
Every shift, every goal, every game,
Central Michigan has turned the corner.
all in one place. CCHN, your home for Chippewa hockey.
Welcome back to Inside Chippewa Hockey, episode number 5. We've taken a look at the M3 team, and now we take a look at the Women's Division II team, the only team at CMU to make the national tournament. I have with me CCHN broadcaster Derek Steele and defenseman Tate Hutchinson. So Tate, this is your freshman year on campus, correct? You're from Calgary, Alberta. Why come from Alberta to Mount Pleasant in the middle of nowhere?
Well, Coach Haney made a good effort. He is a great coach, and the atmosphere of the team was one that I really wanted to be a part of, and seeing that they're making great accomplishments last year and following into this year, it was a team that I wanted to be a part of. And yeah, it was worth the trip for sure. Love to be on the team, so It's been great.
And we're happy to have you with us. And you mentioned the historic accomplishments. You start last year, the team makes their first national tournament appearance. This year, they make the tournament at number 2 in the Central. Now that was a little bit on edge after the last 2 series after the last series and the playoffs for the CCWHA. Derek, take us through that Adrian series. It was a 3-1 loss at home ice, and then you go on the road and stop them 4-0.
I think that really shows you the tenacity and the drive by this team, Reagan. We've talked time and time again about second semester last year and how they got burnt out. They got tired, lost some games on paper we feel like they should have won. So this is a tenacious group. Losing game 1, especially at home, historically a place, Marty being a place that the team really does well at, and then being able to go down to Arrington, which granted, you know as well as I do, Arrington's a hard place to play at sometimes. That 4-0 win, huge, and then to play them again in the CCWHA playoffs. You talked with Sam earlier about playing a team 3 times in a row is very rare. For 2 CMU teams to do it is kind of different, but tough fought game. But again, that tenacity to be able to beat Michigan State less than 24 hours later, that just shows you the drive that this team has.
Yeah, exactly. And Tate, that Adrian series, take me through the mentality in the locker room before game 2. At Arrington, you lose that game tough, 3-1 the night before. What was the drive? What was the motivation to get back in and control that second game?
Oh, we came out with vengeance. We were fighting hard. We were not coming to win. We were coming to win. There was no way that we were going to let a second loss come from them. So we came out hard, competitive, speed, everything was going. Goalie in net, she stopped a lot of shots. Forwards are putting the goals in, and it was great, yeah. There was a lot of high energy out on that ice that game.
Yeah, so you guys came into the CCWHA tournament as the number 2 seed. You play Adrian, or you get the bye, and then you play Adrian, who'd beaten, I believe, Miami of Ohio the night before. And that's a tough game. It was a close game. Adrian ties it up late with a little bit of controversy, and then they win it in overtime.
Yeah, that CMU was really put into a tough place, and we see it a lot with teams at all different levels, that once you get that bye and you have that extra time off, I don't want to necessarily say it's rust starting to develop, but you see the team with the extra game get a little bit of an advantage, and I think that it was just tiredness, especially in overtime, that really hurt the team. I know, Tate, you can talk about that a lot better than I can, but I really think Adrian beating Miami gave them a lot of momentum to then be able to play CMU.
And Tate, how much of a factor was fatigue in that overtime late in that game against Adrian?
Oh, it definitely was. We played our hearts out in the first couple of periods, and then the penalties started happening, and in the end, that's really what took us out. We started the overtime shorthanded, and it was just a tough comeback to make at that point.
Yeah, and speaking of comebacks, you guys lose that semifinal game, but you come back and you beat Michigan State 5-2. With that loss against Adrian, there was a good chance you guys drop out of the top, or out of that second seed in the Central Region in Women's Division II, but that win against Michigan State really solidified your spot.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the drive with this team one more time. Michigan State's another series where you go down to Munn Ice Arena back in early October. You lose a hard-fought game, 4-2, I believe, against Michigan State, and then you come back to Marty the next day, you win it. But this is a really talented Michigan State team, and this is a team, personally, I thought was going to jump up to the number 4 seed in the Central rankings after a really solid weekend for them in the CCWHA tournament. They beat Northern Michigan the first day and then lost to Sioux College, which a lot of teams lose to Sioux College. But I really thought that win against Michigan State is really what kept them in that number 2 spot. And had they lost to Michigan State, I think Adrian would have jumped them. But a really good win by the team on Sunday to be able to bounce back and beat MSU.
Now, looking ahead at the national tournament, Tate, this is obviously your first time going to the big dance. What's the atmosphere like within the team, within the practices? Are you guys having fun? Is it more of an anticipatory atmosphere?
Yeah, we're getting down to it. We're getting hard into the grit and whatnot, and the team is super excited to get going. We're trying to make a comeback from last year and make some new history this year, hopefully. And coach is really getting down on things, and we're practicing new plays, and everything's coming together great. So.
And I know, Tate, obviously you weren't on the team last year, but it was a struggle in the CCWHA tournament and the national tournament last year, not winning a single game. How much has veteran leadership, Mac, Leah, Kylie, Chris, how much has that been brought up in the locker room, or is it a fresh, clean slate this year?
It was honestly a fresh, clean slate. We went in there just knowing that we were going to make some new achievements this year, and that's how it went. They helped us through it. It kept us pumped, and they helped get those wins. And for our first win in the CCWHA playoffs was fantastic. So.
Yeah. So you guys get that win against Adrian. We'll step aside. Derek will stay with us. Tate, thank you so much for joining us here on Inside Chippewa Hockey. We've got a preview of the Women's Division II National Tournament when we come back from Moore Hall TV studio.
Chippewa Hockey is on CCHN.
Oh my goodness!
The place to watch Men's Division III.
Here's Connor Morgan out in front for Porzundek. He scores!
And Women's Division II.
Burnett's gonna get a shot and goal, and she scores!
Every shift, every goal, every game.
Central Michigan has turned the corner.
All in one place. CCHN, your home for Chippewa hockey.
Welcome back to Inside Chippewa Hockey. Reagan Cleaves, along with Women's D2 commentator Derek Steele. Derek, this is a fun national tournament. A lot of returning teams from last year, but also a lot of new ones. Let's start in Pool A. We've got Providence, Delaware, St. Thomas, and Liberty. Liberty, a team we usually see in D1, yep. But they make it in Pool number A in the 4th spot in the Southeast.
Yeah, one team, Reagan, I really am looking at is St. Thomas, the number 3 team coming out of the Western region, and Northeastern was the Cinderella story in Boston last year. I really think it can be St. Thomas this year. I really like the Tommies, and I really like what they have done, and they've had some key wins this year that I think can help propel them to a national title.
And St. Thomas is a club that has had plenty of success throughout the years, not only at the women's Division two level, but they've served as the upsets last year, knocking out UMary in the men's 2 bracket. We've also got Providence and Delaware in there. Providence at that northeast spot 1. They've got to be one of the favorites out of that pool.
Yeah, Providence is a team that I think if St. Thomas doesn't make it out, I think it's going to be Providence College. They swept Assumption 5-1, 4-1. They also beat Boston College, who we'll talk about in a minute, 4-1. They received at least 1 point in 18 of the last 19 regular season games. So they are a team that's coming in on a hot streak, and they're a team I think that can be a force to reckon with come the national tournament.
Okay, so there you go. You got Pool A, Providence, Delaware, St. Thomas, and Liberty. On the other side of things in Pool B, you got Villanova, Dakota Botno, along with Adrian, who the CMU saw in that CCWHA tournament, as well as Assumption.
Yeah, Villanova is a team that's really interesting to me. They've won 9 straight Women's Division II games this season. They have not lost a game since a 1-0 loss against Sacred Heart earlier this season. And they're a team that Dakota Botno upset last year to make it to the semifinals. So they're a team I could see also making it out. Another team that's really interesting for me is Dakota Botno. Some really impressive wins for them. They took on Sioux College, lost to Sioux College earlier this season, but another really interesting team. So there's, again, I think it's going to be that 2-team race between Villanova and between Dakota Botno.
Yeah, Dakota Botno lost to Sioux in the national semifinal last year. They're looking to get back and hoping to make it to the national final this season. Pool C, as you see down by Derek, Assiniboine Community College. They've won 2 out of the last 3 national tournaments, CMU, Boston College, and Northern Michigan. Well, we'll get to that in our final segment, Derek, as we look ahead for CMU and their D2 and their women's D2 team. So we'll leave Pool C alone for now and taking a look at Pool D, the final pool, and it's led by the team that I think everybody in the women's Division II team, women's Division II league. They got to be the favorite, the Sioux College Cougars.
They are definitely the favorites, Reagan, but the game that's really going to be interesting for me is that Northeastern team right there. They were the Cinderella team from the tournament last year, made it all the way to the national finals before losing to Sioux College. So I know they're gearing up to get a revenge against Sioux College, but I was looking at Northeastern's record this year, and I was looking game by game at them. There's really no impressive game that stood out to me. They've been a really consistent team all season long.
Yeah, and they were the Cinderellas of last year, Derek. You and I had the call in their semifinal. They were the only number 4 seed to make it out of the pool play and into the national semifinal. So, as we saw, they may not have a ton of impressive games on the record, but they have shown up in previous tournaments.
Yeah, Northeastern, they're a very veteran-led team by the 2 Polis sisters. Really good goaltending. But talking about Sioux College, the number 1 seed coming out of the central rankings, they're the team I think that's just the clear favorites to go back-to-back. They beat Northeastern, as we mentioned earlier, in the national finals last year. It's going to be hard to beat them, but I think if there's a team, we'll talk about Assiniboine a little bit later in the show. If there's a team that could beat Sioux College, I think it'll be either Northeastern in the pool play or Assiniboine.
Okay, so given that, who do you have as the Pool A, Pool D semifinal?
Ooh, tough one, putting me on the spot. I think this is going to be very boring. I'm going to have to go with the 2-1 seeds. I'm going with Providence in one and then Sioux College in the other.
Fair enough. And then putting aside your CMU bias.
Yes.
You got Pool C, Assiniboine, CMU, BC, and Northern Michigan, and then in Pool B, Villanova, Dakota Botno, Adrian, and Assumption.
I'm going to do Pool B first to keep the CMU fans on their toes. I'll do Pool C first, or Pool B, first. This is a really tough one because I think it'll really come down to that Villanova, Dakota Botno game on day 3 of pool play. That's the game that really decided it last season. I'm going to have to go with the Lady Jacks again, coming out of Pool B for Pool C. You got to go with Assiniboine. I know Central Michigan fans are going to come at me for that prediction, but it's hard to go up again, or it's hard to choose against Assiniboine.
Okay, so Derek's predictions are as follows. It was a Providence and Sioux College semifinal and a Dakota Botno Assiniboine. Who do you got in the final?
I got the 2 Canadian teams. I'm going to have to go with Assiniboine and Sioux College. In the national championship, these teams have faced off twice this year, Reagan. Very close games. They played in the Sioux College Showcase back in January. I'm going to have to go with Sioux College. I'm going Sioux College back-to-back national champions.
Well, so there you go, Derek. Your national champions for 2024 predicted the Sioux College Cougars. Again, it's a league that has been run by Canadians for the last 3 years, with both Assiniboine racking up 2 national champions and Sioux College, the defending national champions. Derek thinks the league will be continued to be run by Canadians, and we'll see when we get to St. Louis. The national tournament dates are the 12th through the 16th of March down at Centene Community Ice Center in St. Louis, Missouri. So that's your national tournament preview for Women's Division II. We'll turn it over on the other side of the break to the Men's Division II as they wrapped up their season with an outdoor game. John Gervasi and I will have that discussion when we come back on Inside Chippewa Hockey.
Chippewa Hockey is on CCHN.
Oh my goodness!
The place to watch Men's Division III
Here's Connor Morgan out in front for Porzundek. He scores!
and Women's Division II.
Burnett's gonna get a shot and goal, and she scores!
Every shift, every goal, every game,
Central Michigan has turned the corner.
all in one place. CCHN, your home for Chippewa hockey.
And we're back here on Inside Chippewa Hockey. Reagan Cleaves once again with you from the Moore Hall Television Studio. Now, after taking a look at the Women's Division II team, we swivel and take a look at the Men's D2 team. Joining me are broadcaster John Gervasi and Aiden Reamer. Reamer, right? Did I get that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sweet. Aiden Reamer, new goaltender for the Men's Division II team. Tell us a little bit about yourself. What brings you to CMU and how? Yeah, what brings you to CMU, I guess?
Well, I enrolled at CMU in the fall. I wasn't really planning on playing hockey, but I was, pretty bored in the dorms. I didn't have a lot to do, and so I figured it'd be a good way to meet new people. And it was a good decision. I've had a lot of fun with the guys. They're really welcoming. Having me join late and everything. I already have a few good buddies on the team, and we've been having a lot of fun. I think we've been playing better. It seems like near the end of the year we closed out better than we started, but
exactly.
It's been good. Exactly.
And you mentioned closing out better than you started. The first and only win of this season came back in the in this first series of that home weekend. First game of that home weekend against Northern Michigan. A big 2-0 shutout win on senior night. John, take us through a little bit of that game.
So, I talk every week about how I can't be any prouder of the boys. And to go that on senior night with a shutout no less, Joel Drucker, Brendan Rochefall and Frankie Williamson had a goal apiece. And like I said, Drucker had the shutout. Frankie almost had our first empty net goal of the season, and it clanged off the post. But a strong start to the game. They were very good offensively. Our zone play is my key every week, and they played so well. Game 2 did not go as planned. We're just going to blame that on the 9:30 a.m. start. There were like 5 or 6 games going on that day.
It's a little ridiculous.
I don't know how you guys did that. It's a quick turnaround.
They played good. I mean, they played about as good as you can for such an early start. Brendan Bages had 2 goals. He's come on strong here in the second semester. Tough game, like I said, early puck drop. But no, I can't be any prouder of them for getting a win on senior night. They deserve that win. They've been fighting all year to get that win and to finally get it against a good Northern squad. They're a very good hockey team, so it was good to see.
Exactly. It's a really good win. And then you guys finished out the year with a couple of unique games. You guys played D1 Eastern, and I believe you got an appearance in that game, did you not?
Yeah, I got the start in that game, and first 2 periods we looked pretty good. I think we went into the third down 4-2. Things got a little chippy. We had a couple guys kicked out a little early, and 2 guys. One was sick, couldn't be there. One got hurt during the game on a shot that he blocked. Thank him for that. Yeah. And it spiraled a little bit at the end, but it was fun getting in that and getting to play against a D1 team, even though it's a weak Eastern team. But
and it certainly is. And you guys again finish out the year on a very unique game. An outdoor game against Concordia of Ann Arbor. It's a 4-3 loss. John, I know you guys were in that late. What proved the difference in that game?
I'm not one to ever blame officials or anything, but with 1:40 to go, a weak tripping call on Brendan Bages that should not have been called. It's one of those things where you should just let him play. It looked like both players fell down, and they scored a power play goal with 49 seconds left in the game. And, you know, it's a tough way to lose. And as a lot of people can tell you, even last year and the year before, when we're in games, we take ourselves out with penalties, some not our fault. And so that's just one of those things where we have to clean up next year. But, you know, Rochefall, Williamson, and Bages had goals. It was fun. It's my second outdoor game to be a part of. We had Clark Park 2 years ago. Both were freezing. But it's a unique experience. And I do want to say, you know, shout out to Concordia. What a well put together event that we had. And hopefully everything gets figured out with their situation with their school and their teams. And hopefully they can come back next year. But it was a fun time.
Yeah, certainly hope Concordia can come back. But Aiden, had you ever been a part of an outdoor game before?
Never. That was my first time playing on outdoor ice. You know, playing a real game. Obviously skated it, but it was a lot of fun. It was pretty cool. Obviously, every goalie took a period, and yeah, it was definitely a lot of fun. I was really looking forward to it all weekend. It's not every year, you know, you get an experience like that. So
yeah, it's certainly not every year, and I'm a little bit jealous of you, John. I've always wanted to call an outdoor game.
So I've got 2 at Yost and 2 outdoor games.
Exactly. You got both of those on me. Taking, John, now I want to take a look at the D2 National Tournament with you. The defending national champions, that's the headline. In both D2, and Devin and I talked about it earlier, D3, Michigan in D3 and UMass in D2, both are not going to make the trip to St. Louis.
Not a good year for defending champs.
No, certainly not. And there are a lot of very, very good teams in this national tournament. Taking a look at Pool A, you got Montana State, Keene State, Concordia of Wisconsin, and Miami of Ohio. Who are the teams to watch in that pool?
You know, it's got to be Miami of Ohio. You know, Montana State had a 34-3 record, which is cool and all, but who did you really play out west? There wasn't a lot of strong teams out west. Miami of Ohio, I mean, Mr. Goalie over there can tell you about how good Miami of Ohio and Kentucky are, and they had wins over Rider and number 5 Kentucky. This is the first regular season champion and tournament champion in 11 years in the TSCHL. If I was a betting man, my money would be on Miami of Ohio to get out of that pool.
Yeah, and so you got Miami of Ohio and Montana State, the 2 top dogs kind of in that Pool A. In Pool B, you've got Northeastern, Weber State, Indiana, and from my count, the lone Michigan team. Michigan State, coming into the Central number 4, they had a gauntlet through that regional tournament.
So I want to point out something in Pool A that has to do with Michigan State. Drury College in Minnesota getting upsets on the first day of regionals. Who'd they beat? Adrian and Sioux. And why is that important? Because Michigan State swept Adrian this year, and they swapped in the rankings. So if Adrian wins that, they have a bye and they don't have to worry about Minnesota. And you're right, Michigan State, lone Michigan team. They got the win over number 9 Jamestown 3-2 in OT, and they beat Maryville, who was a very good hockey club. And they, like I said, they swept Adrian to earn a bye in regionals. Looking at this Pool B, my money's on Michigan State and Indiana, and I would think Michigan State probably has an easier time because Northeastern plays in the Northeast region where it's a battle every single night for all those teams. You have a good Boston College team, good BU team. You know what? I won't normally say this, but I'm probably cheering for Michigan State in this Nationals, along with another team we'll get to in a little bit. But it's good to see someone from Michigan represented for D2.
And they are the lone Michigan team, having beaten Jamestown and Maryville in their regional. Pool C is probably the pool of death. You've got Lindenwood at the number 1 team in the Central Division, in the Central region. Then Liberty at number 2. Liberty is a massive hockey school out east. Then you got Providence and Army, two teams that kind of snuck into the tournament. Obviously had to play through that regional at the 3 and 4 spots in their respective regions. But Army, they're the team that knocked out UMass from the tournament.
Yeah, they did. So they've got some momentum coming in. All I have to say for Providence and Army is good luck because you're going to need it playing Lindenwood. We played Lindenwood last year. Did not go the way you would hope. I mean, Lindenwood's a very good team, and Lindenwood and St. Thomas flip-flop basically the entire year in Liberty. I don't see University of Providence or Army really doing much in this pool. I hope they prove me wrong, because it's cool to see Army in the region or in the pool play.
Yeah, and it is. Lindenwood and Liberty, they're going to play on the final day of pool play in St. Louis. That is going to be a very fun game to watch, especially if both teams come in at 2-0. Taking a look at the final pool, Pool D. Florida Gulf Coast has always been a Southeast powerhouse. They remain the #1 seed in the Southeast. St. Thomas, the team who last season knocked out the Mary Marauders, the defending national champions in Boston. Those are the top 2 teams that earned byes. Tell us about New Hampshire and MSU Denver, who snuck in through the regionals.
Well, I'll tell you this, FGCU apparently has 2 really good hockey teams, as you can attest to that for the last couple of years playing FGCU, and their D2 team might very well be that much better. We could see a national champion for two divisions from the same school. I don't know how good FGCU's D3 team will be in pool play, but it's a possibility. St. Thomas, you said the upset, and they flipped with Lindenwood all year. Shout out Wildcats, UNH. I hope you guys go far. They beat San Anselmo College and Connecticut College, a combined score of 11-1 in those 2 games. And then MSU Denver, they beat Texas and #5 Utah State. I'm not going to lie, I don't know much about the West, other than, Montana State going 34-3 and just dominating their own region. If I had to pick 2 teams that you could possibly see in the national championship, it's probably, Michigan State is one of them. I can see them, especially with their pool, and then Florida Gulf Coast is another one. So it's going to be a fun national. I think nationals is wide open, aside from, you have Lindenwood and FGCU.
I mean, and the D2 nationals is always wide open. You've got, last year it was UMass and Iowa in the national final, 2 teams that weren't even projected to make it out. Iowa had won a dogfight of a double overtime game against Indiana the night before, and UMass carried their rest and their momentum over that Iowa team in that national final. But it is certainly going to be a wide open tournament, and it should be fun.
And you could probably say that about D3 last year too. I don't know how many people thought Michigan was going to win the national championship. If they were, because when you look at D3, you think Hope, and GVSU is good most years. So that national tournament last season was it kind of came out of nowhere, but at the same time it was very similar. It was Hope in Michigan for the 2nd straight year. We won't get that this year, and we will not get a repeat in the D2 national tournament either. Well, thank you, Aiden, so much for joining us. John, you will return in the next segment. When we come back, stand by. We'll have the Players of the Month and a look ahead at the national tournament for the women's 2 team here on CCHN.
Chippewa hockey is on CCHN.
Oh my goodness!
The place to watch men's Division III.
Here's Connor Morgan out in front for Porzundek. He scores!
And women's Division II.
Burnett's gonna get a shot on goal and she scores!
Every shift, every goal, every game.
Central Michigan has turned the corner.
All in one place. CCHN, your home for Chippewa hockey.
Welcome back inside the Moore Hall Television Studio for the final segment of Inside Chippewa Hockey, Episode 5. In this one, I'm joined once again by all 3 analysts, John, Derek, and Devin. And the season's over, but each one of you guys, I asked you to pick out a player of the month. Who you got?
Well, to start things, I think Caleb Woolery, the freshman out of Forest Hills Northeastern, should get this one. Finished at .500 on the year, was their playoff goaltender down the stretch. We know that based on starting 5 of the last 6 games to end the year. Caleb really came to his own as a solidified role for Brendan Martin. There was some talk in the middle of the year, would it be him or Sam Zavelson getting the majority of the starts? They ended up going with Woolery, who had a shutout late in the year against Illinois State, played really well against Northwood and Michigan. I think he's unanimous to start off. Derek, who did you see as your player of the month?
Well, Devin, I went with a goalie as well. I went with Bree Schroer, 15 games played, 12-2-1 record, 935 save percentage. The stat that jumped off the page for me for Schroer is 4 shutouts on the season, 2 in January and February. She had one against Aurora coming out of the semester break, and then she had one against It was Adrian College, the 4-0 win against Adrian. And she was a big reason why CMU had the success they did down the stretch, especially in that Adrian series and then the victory against MSU.
Yeah, and I'd like to ask you, John, just Division II, so much down the stretch here. You guys got your win against Northern Michigan. Talk to us about that.
It was hard to pick a player of the month. It was between Frankie Williamson and this player, and I ultimately had to go with Brendan Bejes because he turned it on in the second semester. He had 4 goals in the last 4 games. He's a force out there on the ice. He can hit people. He can do – I thought I was going to get a Michigan call against Eastern. He can do a lot of things.
By the way, shout out him. It was his birthday yesterday. So, Brendan Bejes, happy birthday to you, my friend.
Happy birthday, Bejes. Yeah, I mean, I cannot wait for next year because a full season of Brendan Bejes and the Kappa Boys is going to be a fun season. Exactly. We had to give them the nickname the Kappa Boys, at least on the air. I feel like whenever they're on the ice, and they stick up for each other, so that's always good to see.
Describe a little bit more what the Kappa Boys adjective means a little bit. Is it being rough and tough? Is it scoring? What does that entail?
Well, I think the team has really calls them the Kappa Boys just because they're in their fraternity. But
okay.
But
sure.
when you see,
well,
here's the thing though.
Or something.
It's a little bit of a
Joe Rizzo, Brendan Bejes, Brendan Rochfall. They you don't want to mess with them if you're the other team because you find out real quick that they're not the type of guys to let things go. They'll go after you too, and they help the team out.
Yeah.
It's very helpful to have them on the team because they stick up for everybody. I mean, just a couple weeks ago against Northern, Joe Rizzo was sticking up for Dylan because for whatever reason this year, teams like to spear our goalie or run into him or even body slam them sometimes.
Everyone's got to have a John Sky. You got to have.
Oh yeah,
exactly.
But they can score too, so it makes it even better.
Yeah, exactly, and so. Unfortunately, both men's D2 and men's D3 teams are done for the year. But Derek, I want to turn the conversation to you.
Yes.
Looking ahead at the second straight national tournament appearance for the women's Division II team. They're in a tough pool, taking on 2-time national champions Assiniboine in their final game. But who do they play before that?
First team is Boston College, and what I really like about Boston College is they are a team that got hot down the stretch, getting points in 18 of their last 19 regular season games, Reagan. They're a team to look out for. And then Northern Michigan is another team. I believe it was like 6 out of their last 7 games. I can't remember exactly what the stat is for the Wildcats. But this is a team Central Michigan saw earlier in the season at Martin Ice Arena, but it's still a team you got to watch out for. And then obviously Assiniboine, who... If I was Assiniboine, I'd still be mad about how Nationals ended for them last season, but they're always going to be a dangerous team, as well as both Boston College and Northern Michigan.
Can I ask you something real quick? You're talking a lot about Northern Michigan and the Central region. It was a gauntlet down the stretch. You talked to Tate about Michigan State probably getting snubbed. They beat Northern Michigan. We know they've got the likes of Chloe Valente, but how does Northern Michigan think about getting out of this pool? Because if I'm a Chippewa, just a fan supporter, this looks like a very winnable pool for them.
And it really does. This is a very favorable pool for Central Michigan. Northern Michigan, a team that you've already swept. But going back to your question really quickly, I think you have to go through Chloe Valente, the leading scorer for the Wildcats once again. She's probably one of the best players in the CCWHA besides Sophia Buckberger and anyone
from Lawrence Tech,
from
right?
Lawrence
who
Tech.
Also didn't make it, surprisingly.
Yep.
Yeah.
But going back to Northern Michigan, you have to play through Valente, and she needs to have a monster national tournament if Northern Michigan has any hope of making it out of this pool.
But Assiniboine is the big one you got to go through. The team that won before Sue did that national championship. If you're looking at a last day, it could come down to those two, right?
But what I really like about Assiniboine is they've kind of gotten a little bit cold down the stretch. They really haven't had the success they had. They dropped 1 to defending national champion Sioux College back in January, but they are a team that's kind of struggled a little bit in the second semester. So if there's a team that I could see upsetting them come the final day of pool play, I could see Central Michigan, who's had success in the second semester, beating Assiniboine.
And Devin, that'll be a fun one. You and I will have the call from the Plager Rink and Centene Community Ice Center. You can watch those Women's Division II National Tournament games on Flow Hockey. There is a subscription required, but you can find out more information on achhockey.org. But that will do it for our episode tonight. We thank you so much for tuning in. For everybody here at CCHN, John Gervasi, Derek Steele, and Devin Sarah, and everybody else, our crew inside the studio, and Trevor Wires, our floor director here tonight, thank you so much for watching, and have a great night.